Fantastic. Listen, I understand that all people registered for today's webinar are here. My name is Borai Chum. I'm a licensed immigration advisor and director of Migration Associates. As you can hear, I'm a Kiwi, and I have.
Hi, I'm Mark Morrison from New Zealand Skills and Demand, also another Kiwi. We're both based up here in London.
Okay, so today's webinar is the second webinar that we're running throughout the world. And the purpose of the webinar is to teach you about life in New Zealand, okay? Talking about the medical system, the health system, the education system. We're going to go shopping. And, you know, I guess our job is to prepare you as much as we can for your new lives in New Zealand. We'd also like the opportunity to answer questions that you may have, and there is a Q&A section that you can ask questions. I'll take you through the actual presentation today, and Mark will be also answering questions. So feel free to ask away. You know, any questions that you have. We're both Kiwis, and obviously want to make this webinar as useful as possible for you. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll make a start on the New Zealand presentation. Mark will go into a separate room and will be able to answer your questions. And then once the New Zealand piece is finished, Mark will then take you through how to get that all-important job offer, okay? And then I will then take you through how to get that visa. So you'll find it very useful, and you know, do have a look at the questions other people are asking, and then feel free to ask those questions. So I'm going to screen share and get our presentation up. There we go. Okay, so today's schedule, like I said, we're going to give you an overview of New Zealand. That's going to last for approximately 40 minutes. And then I'm going to hand you over to Mark, and he's going to explain how to get that job offer. And it's going to run for about 10 minutes. And then I'm going to go through the immigration process. And then we're going to have a Q&A session at the end of it also. So you're looking at just over an hour. You know, I think you will find this very, very useful for you move out to New Zealand. Okay, so New Zealand in numbers. We have a population of about 4.5 million in New Zealand. About a third of the population live in Auckland. Now, I do know that Auckland is a very popular place amongst South African expats, but we're also seeing a lot of South Africans settle in Wellington and Christchurch also. That population is made up of 69% European, white European New Zealanders. Then we have just under 15% of Indigenous Maori people, 9.2 Asian, so that's Chinese, that type of Asian, not Pakistani or Indian. And then we have 6.9% who are non-Maori, who are Pacific Islanders. So, you know, something that we share in common with South Africans is our love of rugby. And you'll know that our makeup of our All Black team is very multicultural and includes Pacific Islanders and Maori also. So, you know, if I give you, some of you may be familiar with the size of the UK. We have the same landmass as the UK, but in the UK there's 70 million people living here. Okay, whereas in New Zealand there's 4.5 million. So acres and acres of space, and that's also represented by the size of your property, and it is that kind of the lifestyle of just having the clean air and you know, the space for kids to run around in. So certainly a lot of people from the UK are leaving or wanting to leave the UK because of the population. There's just too many people in New Zealand and in the UK, whereas in New Zealand we're pretty relaxed and the numbers are pretty low considering our landmass. Now, if I give you an example about how population can impact your lifestyle, my family are over in New Zealand at the minute. My oldest child, Oliver, he's turning 6 this year. He's in a classroom in central Christchurch with 18 kids with him in his class. Okay, when you compare that to other countries, it could be 30 or 25, you know, 35. So that's what the New Zealand population allows. You know, that pressure on services, etc., is not there because of our population. So that's one of the you know, positives of going to New Zealand. Okay, so the weather. You know, as you can see, looks like a very bright day, and we have a very temperate climate. Okay, so our rainfall is moderately high. Okay, but we do have a lot of sunshine hours, across most parts of the country. Okay, we are so close to the mountains and the sea that our climate reflects that. So in January and February, our warmest months, and in July is our coldest month of the year. So at the minute, we are in March. So yesterday, I think it was 28 degrees in Christchurch, so my wife says, and we're heading into autumn. So that summer is extending from what traditionally is, January, February. It's going into March in terms of that hot weather in Christchurch. So it does range over the year between 20 and 30 degrees in the summer, and in the winter you're looking at 10 to 15 degrees. In the winter, we do have sharp days where we have frosts. What that means is that the air is pretty clear. So if you have a frost in the morning, you will be pretty much guaranteed a very sunny day. So whilst it's cold in the morning when you wake up, you'll find that for the most part of the day it's very sunny and warm in winter. Now, some of you may have gone to New Zealand before, but that 20 to 30 degrees, that's very hot. The UV index is quite high in New Zealand. So when you compare 20 to 30 degrees here in the UK, for instance, it's not the same type of heat. Okay, so you'll likely have to go out, wear a hat and some sunscreen, because that can, that 20 to 30 degrees is quite hot. So we've put a bit of a chart here. So Auckland has, the temperate climate with hot and humid summers. Okay, and in Auckland it can rain, for 20 minutes a day. It's a very tropical kind of weather, whereas in Christchurch it's a little bit different because of where we are. So it's in the South Island. It has a drier, temperate climate, and a different average in terms of the temperature there. So because we're south, a lot, down quite close to the Antarctic, it's a little bit colder over the winter. Okay, so in London you have an average rainfall of 600 millimetres. Okay, in Durban 1,009, in Auckland 1,211, and in Christchurch 618. So that's a big difference between Auckland and Christchurch, and that's mainly due to the tropical weather in Auckland. So the average monthly temperature is around 15 degrees, 12 degrees in Christchurch. Slightly, I guess, colder than South Africa and Durban, but still, relatively warm. And then, we can't compare in terms of the yearly sunshine hours, but a lot more than what it is in the UK. So there is, depending on where you live in South Africa or around the world, it will differ. But I can assure you that the weather is going to be very similar to the weather that you experience in South Africa. Okay, so housing. So housing is always going to be different from country to country. You'll see in these pictures here, you'll see a lot of timber that's been used to build houses. You see one house that's one floor, you see another that's double floor. Because of the heat, and very similar to South Africa, you have that outdoor living, so being able to watch the kids while you're watching TV or cooking, your meals is something it's very much sought after, and that kind of barbecue area that I know that South Africans like. So very much, I think, similar in terms of that feng shui of the outdoor and inside living. In terms of renting a home, so most of the clients that we're helping at the minute, they would rent initially before they buy a house. Okay, in most cases it's just a matter of getting to a house and renting it, and then within 12 months deciding where you're going to be living once you have got familiar with the area. So most rental properties are unfurnished, apart from the main chattels like oven, carpets and curtains. Okay, so rent is normally paid weekly, and you need to pay a bond of 4 weeks to the tenancy people, and that bond is held on trust for you, and will be paid back to you unless there's damage to that property. Now, in New Zealand, the landlord pays the rates, okay, that's a lot different to what it is here in the UK, whereas the tenants pay that rates or the council tax. So I'm not too sure how it works in South Africa, but that's certainly a cost that you will save if you're renting in New Zealand. In some areas in New Zealand, you don't pay for water usage. Okay, if you're renting, we advise that you go and get home and contents insurance. Definitely recommended, just to protect you from fire and theft. Okay, and I would really recommend that you go to these websites that we've included here: trademe.co.nz /property and realestate.co.nz. A big part of your change in lifestyle or the life that you live in New Zealand is going to be focused on the type of house that you're going to be living in. Okay, and I know that a lot of websites in New Zealand, real estate websites, have fantastic options for you to go and view a house through a virtual tour or the photos that are available to you. So without being in New Zealand, it's going to be the best thing to give you a taste of what type of space that you'll have and what the houses look like and the costs. Okay, so definitely be looking at renting. And then, you know, transitioning to purchasing a house once you feel settled and comfortable and understand where you're going to be living. So the average weekly rental prices. So this is going to differ from, you know, location to location. If I give you an example, if you have a look at Auckland for a 3-bedroom house, you're looking at 500 or 600, and that's West Auckland per week. Whereas in Auckland Central, you're looking at 800 to 1,050 for a 4-bedroom house per week. So these are figures on a per week basis. And you can see as we move down to areas that are not so populated. So if I give you an example, in Invercargill, you're looking at 240 for a 3-bedroom house and 247. So a lot's going to depend on the location of the house that you're looking to rent and how many bedrooms it's got. Okay, but that gives you a good snapshot on you know, the cost of renting these types of houses. If you're single or you don't have any children, you may consider house sharing, which means that you would share those costs with other people living in that house. And a lot of the younger guys who go to New Zealand will be house sharing, so you wouldn't necessarily pay that full amount. So that gives you a good indication. You know, a little bit more information, visit the website that we've got there, and you know, do your research. You know, in terms of location, you know, in Christchurch, you can get from one side of the city to the other side of the city quite easily. So it's just a matter of you going out there and being happy with, you know, the area and renting where you want to rent wherever you go. So it does vary, and do your research. TradeMe is a great, so that website there, trademe.co.nz, that also will show you you know, information about renting property and the costs, etc. So buying a home, you know, so once you've gone to New Zealand, you've rented a house for 6 to 12 months, and you're settled, because it's going to take you a good 12 months to settle into life in New Zealand. Okay, and once you feel settled, you can then start making those big decisions on whether or not you want to buy a house. Now, most of the houses in New Zealand are built of wood and they're standalone. Okay, the difference here in the UK at least is that we don't really have central heating or double glazing. I mean, the newer houses will, okay, but certainly not the older houses. Okay, a lot of the heating is done through air conditioning units and heat pumps are called. So you'd have maybe a house that would be fitted with 3 heat pumps, and that gives you that dry heat. Some houses also have built-in log burners that could also heat the hot water also, which is a wetback. Okay, so in order to look at the houses, obviously you do what you do in South Africa. You look at the local rag, the newspapers or the magazines and websites. Now in New Zealand we have open homes in the weekend, which means that the house is open from 10 till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and potential buyers can go and have a look at the house. Okay, and that's how it's generally done. You know, some of it's done by appointment, but a lot of the real estate agents like just to organise that open home. And to buy a house in New Zealand is very, very easy. A lot of houses come with conditions that need to be met, like building inspection reports, finance, and title. Okay, but once it all becomes unconditional, your house, you could have your house within 2 weeks, providing that everything was all done quite quickly, because there's no chains. Okay, so it's really important that you do get legal advice in addition to the advice that you're getting from your real estate agents. You also, obviously, finance is a big thing. In New Zealand, in most cases, you'll need 20% deposit to purchase a house. Okay, and once you've got that, the bank will give you that finance to purchase that. So again, calculating what deposit you've got would be depending on where you're buying, etc. So that's something that you need to look into. But I don't think, for a lot of applicants that are going, a lot of our clients, we're just saying to people, concentrating on renting property first. Okay, because once you get in there and get settled, you then get a really good understanding of locations, and understanding the good areas, the bad areas, the areas that are costly, the areas that are good value. Okay, so obviously everyone wants to purchase their own house, but I think at this stage you should be just concentrating on renting and getting settled, and then everything else will fall into place. In terms of the method of purchasing a house in New Zealand, auction is a very common way of buying and selling. Okay, which means that all those conditions need to be unconditional. Now, a lot of those real estate websites, what you can do is you can put in an average, for a range. So from, say, 300,000 to 400,000, and it will bring up all those properties in that range, even if it's at auction. Because with auction, you don't know the purchase price. It's done on the day, and it's all led by supply and demand. Okay, so if you know your budget and you're seeing a lot of houses on auction, just search on those websites the price range, and you will find houses that may fall within that price range. So maybe a little bit different to how things are done in South Africa, but it's very common at the minute, way of purchasing. So yeah, I mean, go and have a look on the websites, and that will give you a really good idea in terms of renting and buying what type of houses that you'll be living in New Zealand. So the interest rate, Mark's just piped in, the interest rate at the minute, you're looking at around, it's the floating interest rate, I think, is 3.8% or 3.9 or just under 4%. And interest rates, they've just recently cut the official cash rate just recently, which means that there has been a bit of a decrease in interest rates from a lot of the major banks. Similar to here in the UK, we don't expect interest rates to go up dramatically, probably in the next 2 to 3 years. So it's a very good time to buy at the minute, because your cost of borrowing is a lot lower with interest rates being as low as they are. So a good time definitely to be looking at purchasing a property given the interest rates that are available. In terms of the median house prices, so again, it's all location, location, location. So as you can see, up in Auckland, property is quite expensive, and that's the median. Okay, that's the average price. That doesn't take into account what's really expensive or what's cheap. Okay, in Christchurch, 425,000. So you can see the difference between locations there. I would say that the two hottest property areas would be Auckland and Christchurch, as shown on this map of New Zealand, and you can see when you go into other areas, things become a lot cheaper. So if you look at Southland, right at the bottom of the South Island, you can see that we're talking probably a third of the cost of a house up in Auckland, even less. Okay, so do your research. The most important thing for you guys would be being in a position to have the deposit to get the finance. Okay, and therefore that's going to affect how quickly you can get on that property ladder. But what we're also finding is with Auckland heating up, the Waikato and the Bay of Plenty are becoming hot spots also. So again, the best thing to do with these sums here, it's so hard to figure out what that's going to buy you. The best thing to do is get on those websites and visually look at some of these houses that you can see the layout, etc., to get an idea of what you'd be paying. So healthcare, I think this is going to be a really important one, and I think the healthcare would differ quite dramatically to what it is in South Africa. We come, obviously New Zealand's a colony of the UK, and our system is very similar to NHS, and what I mean by that is it's publicly funded, so it's access, and the visas that you'll have be able to have access to that healthcare. There's a few subtle differences, but free public hospital treatments, healthcare during pregnancy and childbirth, and you'll get subsidies from the government on GP visits and prescription medicines. We have 40 public hospitals throughout New Zealand, okay, and I can assure you that these hospitals are not overrun, and there is that service that we provided to you. What we do have that's very unique in New Zealand is what we call ACC, okay, and basically this means an ACC levy is paid by your employer, okay, and it goes into a fund where if you are out playing rugby and you tear your Achilles or whatever it may be, and you can't work, the ACC scheme will allow your employer to pay up to 80% of your salary, okay, for the time that you're off work. So that's very unique, okay, because accidents do happen, and it's nice to know that if you do, and if you are in an accident and it's covered by ACC, you get up to 80% of your wage, which is great. So I'm not too sure how things work in South Africa on that front, but certainly a positive of the system that we have in New Zealand. Now, as with all systems, you can either go public or private. A lot of Kiwis do elect to have private health insurance, and that's basically to mitigate or to avoid any queues that you have to have for emergency operations. Okay, there are a wide range of private healthcare insurance providers, a lot of policies with a lot of different premiums, and that's going to really depend on any previous or current existing health conditions that you have. Okay, but just bear in mind that you still be entitled to the free public health service and accident and emergency care. Okay, so whilst there's that option to have private health care, if you don't have it, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get looked after. Okay, so it's your choice whether or not you go and get private health care, but if you don't, you still be looked after by the government. Okay, so that's a useful website for you to go have a look at. In terms of the difference, we do charge to go. We do get charged to go to see the doctor. Okay, now it is part subsidised by the government. So as you can see, for those under 6, it's pretty much free. From 7 to 17, you're looking anywhere between 10 to 25 New Zealand dollars. From 17 to 44, from 15 to $65, and from 45 and above, 15 to 35 New Zealand dollars. So it is what we call a user pays system. Okay. Now, in addition to the GP visit, you get subsidised prescriptions, and again, for those under 6, it's free. Okay. And another thing that's quite expensive in New Zealand, unfortunately, is the dental care. Okay. So as you can see, a routine, annual checkup would cost you at least 75 New Zealand dollars. So at least, for the UK applicants, they all go and visit their dentist before they go to New Zealand, and get a bit of a checkup and a bit of a polish and clean. And I'm not too sure how it kind of works. Maybe if you could let us know on the chat with Mark how that works in South Africa. Do you have to pay to go see the doctor? How are prescriptions dealt with, and the cost of dentists, because that would be great for us for our knowledge. The education system. So hopefully, some of you have kids, so this is going to be, obviously applicable. We are moving back to New Zealand permanently. I am anyway. My family are there, and one of the main reasons is for the education system. With a lot less people, we feel that the education system will be better for our children and create a lot more opportunities. And in world standards, tertiary education or trade educations, etc., is not that expensive, and it's not as competitive as what it is in countries like the UK and Australia. Okay, so our education is well known, the system that we've got in place, and it's very holistic. So kids can be kids. without that pressure of, you must get X, in your, in your next test. Okay. So the schooling age is compulsory from the ages of 6 to 16. Okay. And we're going to just focus on primary and secondary school here. Most children commence school after their fifth birthday, and that's it. Once you turn 5, you start school. It's actually quite a weird system how it works, but so you have kids coming into school on random days depending on where their birthday is, and you'll have your child coming back home saying, Chris has joined our class. So in New Zealand, state funding education is available, so that means you don't pay school fees, and we have years 1 to 13, and that's the NCEA. That's just how that's our curriculum. And in certain areas you have zoning. Again, can you let us know if zoning applies in South Africa? But what that means is that if you are living in a certain area, you can only go to that school will only accept applications if you're in that zone. Okay, the term dates are very important to understand the New Zealand process. So term 1 starts at the end of January, it goes all the way through to mid-April, and then they break, and then they start in late April, and then they go to the beginning of July, and then they break, and then mid-July to the mid-September, another break called the last term, which is the longest stretch for these kids, from mid-October to mid-December. Okay, so the way it works is that from December all the way to the end of January, that's our holiday. A lot of employers, require you to take your annual leave during that period of time, so that's in December. So that means that whole Christmas period, New Zealand is, everything's still going, but everything's a little bit slow. Everyone's on holidays, the kids are on holidays, people are holidaying, people are barbecuing, and it really is an enforced break. And I think it's really important because everyone needs that break, and it's a break that's premised around family time because the kids are off school, which is fantastic. So my 2 kids, they started. So my wife went in mid-January, and they've started school at the end of January. Okay, now, a lot of applicants think it's really important for them to start school at the right time. I think what you've got to bear in mind is how adaptable the kids are, and can be, and how flexible they are. The other thing is, schools in New Zealand aren't like what they are here in the UK or maybe in South Africa in terms of accepting kids to go to school in terms of applications. All my wife did was ring up a school, fill out a form, and a place was given to our oldest. Okay, so once you get out to New Zealand, you'll understand the areas and the locations that you're living in, and then you'll start looking at schools. I would call the schools up, go visit the head teacher. Karina spoke to, Karina's my wife, she spoke to the head teacher on the phone. She got a really good feel for that school, and she spoke to another couple other, to kind of compare. But once you're in New Zealand, I think, don't make that decision until you're in New Zealand. You get a chance to kind of visit these headmasters and also look at the schools and the facilities. Okay, so that's how the primary and secondary school education works in New Zealand. So some schools have intermediate. So there'll be some schools that are just primary school by themselves, okay, or some schools that are primary and intermediate, or you would then have primary, intermediate, and high school. Okay, now if you have primary, intermediate, and high school, you may be in a kind of a rural area, okay, whereas it's very unusual for a school to have in the bigger cities to have all 3. Okay, so in terms of how we work the NCEA, that's the model of our curriculum. And you need to obviously in high school finish up to year 13 to be able then apply for university or make the grades to get into uni. Okay, so so state funded, it could be a mixture of both, or private schooling. So private, and that mainly is in high school where you pay tuition fees. But you'll find that a lot of the state schools are very, very competitive in terms of the schooling that they get. Both Mark and I are from publicly funded schools. Okay, I went to St Bede's, which is in Christchurch, and Mark went to Christchurch Boys High. We competed on the sports field academically against those private schools. Okay, so the point that I'm making is that education across the board is very, very similar, and the standard is very, very similar. The only thing that you get with the private schools is better Bunsen burners, or better tables, or better computers. But the teaching is very similar across the board. In terms of university and higher education, we have 8 universities, 20 polytechnics and institutes of technologies. Now, if you're looking to obviously undertake, or your children are looking to undertake higher education, the government will subsidise the fees of those educational institutions, and you'll be able to get student loans to pay for those fees. If I give you an example, for an arts degree, you're looking at about 3,000 New Zealand dollars full-time for 1 year, okay? Whereas if you look at a medical degree, it's approximately 10,000. So it really does depend on what university you're going to and what you're studying. But I think on comparison to a lot of the schools, I mean, in the UK, it's £9,000 for 1 year. So £9,000 is about 18,000 New Zealand dollars. So for 1 year, you could have had a hold of an arts degree in New Zealand, Because the population is quite low in New Zealand, the entry requirements, in terms of competition for places is a lot lower. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's very accessible whether or not you go to university or polytechnics or institutes of technology because of the population, okay? And that the population in this country and other countries is driving the cost of higher education. You don't have that problem in New Zealand, and the standard of higher education in New Zealand is comparable to some of the universities around the world. So again, that's how population increases problems in other countries, whereas in New Zealand we don't have that problem. So useful websites, okay? So just a reminder, we'll send you these useful websites as a follow-up in the next couple of days. So you take them down, but you will still get these useful websites at a later date. Okay, and for those who've got young children, you may want to look at some of these websites just to see what the childcare entitlements are, and the cost of childcare, because I know that's another important thing. In terms of the New Zealand driver's license, so you can start driving when you're 16, and I think that sounds quite young. It is young, but you've got to put that into context. New Zealand, we don't have the big highways or motorways that you do here in the UK or maybe in South Africa, but you're going for lifestyle. So when I was at high school, my father encouraged me to get my license, and that meant that I could drive to basketball practice or cricket practice, or I could drive to Saturday sports by myself, or take my brother, or whatever it may be, or take my friends. So that's going to free up your time in terms of, you're not busy, driving around to sports or extracurricular activities for your children. They can be a little bit more independent. We have 3 stages. We have a learner license. Okay, so the driver must be accompanied by someone who's got the full license. A restricted license, that's when you're 16. You have that restricted license for a period of time, and you must have people in the car that have also got a license, and then you then upgrade to a full license, which means that you can, obviously, pack out the car with, your friends. Okay, so it is 3 stages. Now, if you hold a current or invalid overseas driver's license, you can drive up to a period of 12 months from the date you arrive in New Zealand, and then once that 12 months is up, you can then convert your South African license into what will be a New Zealand driver's license. Okay, there's a few things that you need to do: an eye test and a license fee. Okay, but it's relatively straightforward. We drive on the left-hand side of the road. We drive in kilometres per hour, and you may see some sheep and some cows on the rural roads, but it's relatively relaxed and stress-free. Depending on where you are, a traffic jam can be a very, very rare thing. I know from the guys here in the UK, traffic just drives them mental. Okay, so if it's a sunny day here in the UK, every man and his dog wants to go to the beach, what that means is that the roads are going to be packed. Okay, so if you haven't been to New Zealand before, driving is pretty relaxed, and you won't get those queues and traffic jams. So the cost of living. So this is going to be I guess an important aspect of your move out to New Zealand. I think one of the key things is a lot of our applicants are going to New Zealand for a lifestyle. Okay, now New Zealand is stuck in the middle of the South Pacific, unlike the UK or South Africa, where you've got major trading partners, surrounding you, and therefore, because of simple economics, supply and demand, some things are going to be a little more expensive in New Zealand because of that supply and demand and how that all works. Okay, so we have a tax on goods which is called GST, and it's 15%. So if you go into a shop and you see the price of something, that's a full price with the GST included. Okay, our tax rates on personal income are less than a lot of the OECD average. Okay, and that website there is a good website for you to have a quick understanding on how cost of living compared to the cost of living in South Africa. I still think though that it's very hard to compare with the exchange rate and what you get. You need to really be living in New Zealand to truly understand your purchasing power and the cost of living, earning New Zealand dollars and paying all those expenses to get it true. You can do all the numbers, you can punch things in the spreadsheet, but you can't take into account the factors such as safety, such as lifestyle, etc., in terms of how you'll feel when you're living in New Zealand. Okay, so general cost, you're looking at just under $2 New Zealand dollars for a petrol, for a litre of petrol. Flat white coffee is around $4, so for $4.50. In terms of, this is an example where some things may be cheaper or more expensive. In New Zealand, a front-loading washing machine is anywhere between $800 to $3,000, and a top load is anywhere between $500 to $1,700. And then televisions. In terms of our move, we've not purchased any televisions here to take over with us. Generally, a lot of electrical goods in New Zealand are quite cheap, but some can be expensive, like the washing machines. So if you've got a piece of paper and a pen, Harvey Normans, www.harveynormans.co.nz, that is a shop that sells electrical goods, couches, etc. That would be a really good website. Just search Harvey Normans in New Zealand, and you'll be able to look at the cost of everyday household appliances, furniture, etc. So a grocery comparison. So what we've tried to do here is go shopping in what we call Countdown, and I think we've taken these costs from Countdown and then also Amsterdam Tips, which I believe is a South African supermarket. Okay, so we've gone and bought some key essentials. We've got some milk, bread, eggs, butter, tea bags, pasta, cooking oil, apples, potato, lamb chops, because we're in New Zealand, right? And laundry powder, because we're going to need to kind of wash our clothes because we're spending so much time in the outdoors, potato crisps, and Oyster Bay. So okay. Mark, do you want to just explain how we go through this grocery comparison, because you put this together?
Yeah, sure. So apologies as well. The website is not Amsterdam Tips, as you're probably realising. It's I think it's Pick and Pack. One of the colleagues in my office is actually from South Africa, so he mentioned that was a good website to go to. So if you look at the actual totals at the bottom, which I think, Bora, is what you were wondering about, you'll see the basket of goods comes out to be around $66.51, well, exactly $66.51. Okay, and according to our research, the same basket of goods came out to be about 350 Rand. Now, if you look at the exchange rate and simply take that Rand amount of 350 Rand back to the New Zealand dollar, it works out to be $34. Okay, so you would look at those two numbers and go, well, groceries are much, much cheaper in South Africa than they are in New Zealand, so therefore, this is going to be expensive. Why would we do this? We did some further research into average wages and how long it would take for you, how many hours it might take you to work in order to pay for those groceries. And you can certainly correct me on the chat if I'm wrong, but an average wage for, say, a carpenter or builder worked out to be around 40 Rand per hour, which, according to my rough calculations, mean you probably need to work 8 or 9 hours in order to pay for those groceries. Now, carpenters are generally earning around 25 to 30 New Zealand dollars an hour as an entry point into the New Zealand market. So that's about 2 or 3 hours of work to pay for those $66 worth of groceries. So, you know, if you look at it in terms of a relative amount versus your earning potential, that's the most important thing, as opposed to how the numbers actually stack up from a exchange rate perspective.
So in summary, you whilst it looks a lot cheaper in terms of the overall cost in South African rand, and when you take the exchange rate into account, you actually in New Zealand you work more in order to get you have to work more hours in order to come to that, you know, to be able to purchase it. So it's all about purchasing power. Okay, you'll get paid more New Zealand dollars per hour than what you would in South Africa, and therefore, you know, it would take you a lot less time in New Zealand work-wise to be able to afford that. Have I got that right, Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little bit tricky and a little bit complex, okay? But this is why, like my comment before, you can't just plug things into a spreadsheet and think that you're going to be able to guesstimate the cost of living. And the cost of living is all about tangible items, such as what's in the supermarket basket, but doesn't take into account intangibles, okay? And I know that from a lot of South African clients that I'm dealing with at the minute, the intangibles are the safety and the welfare of your children and your family, etc., etc. So again, you know, once you're in New Zealand, you'll get a really good understanding of the cost of living once you're earning and spending. It's the best way to do it, and unfortunately, you have to be there to figure it out. But all I can say is that there is, you know, over 4.5 million people living in New Zealand, and they're, you know, in most cases, they're affording to live and work, you know, and enjoying that lifestyle. So, and there's a lot of people going and wanting to live there also, and people that we've helped who are absolutely happy with the lifestyle that they've got. You know, so again, go back to what this move means for you, lifestyle, safety, etc., etc., and you will make it work. Okay, so instead of buying that bottle of Oyster Bay, you may buy a cheaper bottle of wine. You know, so it's all relative in terms of what type of lifestyle you're going to live. If you want to buy that Mercedes-Benz and have it on hire purchase, well, you're not going to have enough money to feed yourself. You know, so it really does depend. And you know, if I want to go back to the example that my wife and I mean, obviously we've been plugging things into spreadsheets, but we ourselves have said we're going to give this move 12 months to understand how the true cost of what is the true cost of living, and we're Kiwis, you know, so you know, you're not expected to figure out the true cost of living overnight. It's going to take a long time, especially with the startup costs that you have initially getting into New Zealand. So it will take time, but I think after a year you'll get a grapple on, you know, what is the true cost, you know, versus what you're earning. Okay, so why move to New Zealand? Okay, so listen, it is the quality of life. You know, I mean, Auckland, our biggest city, is ranked #3 in the world, and that's based on factors such as housing, recreation, education, and political environment, which I know is really important for you guys. You know, what's going on here in the UK, there's still instability here with, you know, some of the bits and pieces that are going here. I can assure you that our political environment in New Zealand is very, very stable, and I think the key reasons why a lot of people are moving is to get a bit more in terms of housing, you know, a bit more space, to be able to have that outdoor lifestyle and create those opportunities for their children. Okay, in a 2015 survey, Auckland was ranked #61, where the most expensive city was ranked #1. So when you compare that with Sydney, we do pretty well. Wellington's 83 and London's #12. So in the general scheme of things, we're not up there in terms of being the most expensive in the world. Okay, I reckon that we'll be up there in terms of that quality of life, and that's what that first survey says, which is the most important thing and one of the reasons why a lot of people are looking to get out to New Zealand. So why move? Okay, listen, all of you have got something very much in common today. You're looking to move for various reasons. I just want to point out a few here. I mean, our economy and jobs are very, very stable. Okay, we're looking at growth in jobs across the country, mainly in Auckland and Christchurch. When things stop in Christchurch in the next 10, 15 years, there's going to still be work up in Auckland. And what that does is drives economies in other parts of the New Zealand. Okay, so I heard a story the other day that all the steel that's going to Christchurch, some of it was being bought up in a Nelson, and a company in Nelson. So that Nelson company is booming. So as you can see, there's spiral effects, and we just need skilled people. It's, you know, that's the situation. And if we don't get those skilled people, we're not going to be able to keep up with some of the projects. In terms of education, we've discussed this. Listen, you know, our 15-year-olds scored ahead of those in the UK on reading, maths, and science in the UNH in a UN report in 2015. Okay, we have a very robust and I think a very holistic education system where kids can be kids. Okay, when I shut my eyes, I just imagine being in bare feet, running around, playing sport, tackling, getting muddy and whatnot. You know, and that's what the education system allows. You know, just kids being kids, and those kids who aren't at a certain stage, at a certain age, will catch up to you know, that level. So that's, you know, important fact for my kids, and we are world renowned, you know, given that report. So in terms of social political, I mean, I know I don't want to pick on South Africa, but I know that you know, corruption is a big issue in South Africa, whereas in New Zealand we're the least corrupt nation in the world, tied with Denmark. Okay, so that, you know, is something that we're very proud of. In terms of landscape, listen, we've got beautiful landscape. It's almost like sometimes you can be forgiven thinking that you're in the set of a movie and with this backdrop. You know, we have fantastic walks and tramps. You know, and Milford Sound was rated one of the top destinations by TripAdvisor, and that's just a stunning piece of you know, beauty down in the South Island. Another reason, and I harp on about this, is our population. You know, and population does drive the problems that the big countries face in terms of access to services, access to education, etc. Okay, and space. If you've been to New Zealand before, you'd understand that we have a lot of space. Okay, and this is a really interesting one. More people live in Auckland than the whole of the South Island. You know. If you haven't been to the South Island, it's a beautiful place. It's a big place, and that really just goes to show how much space we've got. And that space is going to allow you to actually stop and think. It's going to allow you to get out in the outdoors with your family and the children. And it's not going to mean that you're going to be frustrated with the traffic jams, queues, you know, everything. You know, you can just live your life and do what you want to do with space and tranquility. Okay. I mean, one of the other things that we're actually quite proud of is our innovation, okay? Innovation in terms of technology and, you know, some of the inventions that were made in New Zealand, but also, you know, the fact that we're proud to say that, you know, that we've had a woman that's been Prime Minister, Governor General, and the Chief Justice, you know, and we were the first country to give women the right to vote. Okay, so you know, and that is probably related to that social political you know, aspect, in terms of the fact that, you know, it's equal opportunities for everyone. Okay, and that's really, really important. Okay, so why move again? So no matter where you are in New Zealand, you're approximately 15 minutes from somewhere spectacularly beautiful. Okay, and that is the case. You know, the width of the South Island, you're looking at maybe a 4-hour trip, about 4 or 5 hour trip, right, Mark? 3.5. Okay, it's gone down. You can actually, you can see, it really is. You can see the mountain ranges, you can see the sea. It is very, very beautiful. Now, we helped a client of ours, his name is Roger Stone, and I'll just go, he's living in Christchurch. He says we're about 30 minutes drive from the beach and just over an hour from a ski in the mountains. Now, Roger went over there with his family. Lorna was his wife, and his son was Daniel. They bought a piece of land, and after settling in Christchurch for about 12 months, they then purchased a piece of land and they built their own house. And we're still in touch with Roger, and he just said that he's from Birmingham, and he said that he could never ever afford to do that in the UK. He had some input in terms of the architectural design of his house, okay, and Daniel, who was playing PSP, the handheld video games, is now living a very outdoor life. And the most important thing that Roger said that he is developing in terms of his academic side of things more than what he did in the UK. So, he's a fantastic case study of someone who just went over there with his family. His wife's a hairdresser. She got a job really easily as a partner of a visa holder. The partner will be able to work in any occupation, and what we're finding with partners is that they're picking up work relatively quite quickly. So a very happy client, and it just goes to show you, some of the things some of these clients are getting up to in terms of, purchasing a piece of section of land and then building, which is great. So, this is it. So I would say that this is a picture almost depicting that December period. We're off, okay? Unfortunately, there's no biltong, but there's crayfish, and there's wine there too. And I look at this and I kind of think this is what New Zealand's like in the summer, where it's just space, tranquility, and relaxing. And a lot of people up in Auckland especially own boats, but you'll probably have a friend that will have a boat, and you can just tag along with him or her. The Batch is a holiday home, so not everyone owns a Batch, but again, you'll have a friend who has it, or their parents may have a Batch, and you'll be using a Batch to kind of have that holiday. And then, something that we share with you South Africans is that barbecue. Okay, and we probably haven't got it up here, but a rugby ball should be up there also. So as long as you're prepared to wear an all black top after being there for 12 months, that's good enough for us. So what I'm going to do is hand you over to Mark, and then I'm going to get onto the chat, and he's going to go through how to find work in New Zealand.
Thanks very much, Bore. Hey, look, I've been receiving some great questions so far, so thank you for interacting with us. It's really, really good to hear from you all. So look, I'm going to put my New Zealand Skills and Demand hat on. So just a little bit about New Zealand Skills and Demand. Okay, we're a privately owned and operated business. The business began in 2012 up here in the United Kingdom. So we've got a London office with 3 staff, myself and Guy Lemon and Suze Dyson. And basically we're here to assist people with their research on New Zealand, and then also hopefully getting you ready for job interviews and hopefully a job offer at the end of the process. So being only 2 hours, 1 hour different, no, it is 2 hours different between South Africa and England, makes it very easy for us to talk with you. Most days of the week I'm in touch with different candidates down in South Africa on Skype or on the mobile phone. The other part of our business is down in New Zealand. So we have a Christchurch office where Glenn Davis is based, and he's our New Zealand account manager, and his job is to establish relationships with existing companies and also trying to develop new relationships with other companies as well who might have demands for workers, and the New Zealand market isn't giving them what they need, but they don't understand how to employ an overseas candidate. So we're kind of like the middleman here to bring you to the employers and also to connect the employers to, quality candidates such as yourself. So we work with large reputable companies who are willing and able to employ overseas candidates, and we've placed about 400 candidates in the last sort of probably three years now. That probably needs updating. So the opportunity, well, I think, we'll cover this one off really quickly. We've already sort of been over this with Bore, but certainly that New Zealand lifestyle, that work-life balance, which we certainly try and, maintain, getting out and doing physical activity after work or cultural events, whatever it is that you might like to do with your friends and family, and certainly on the weekends as well. It's also about experiencing a new way of life and to see a different part of the world. And then it's also the fact that, this is a really unique project that's going on, especially down in Christchurch, with the level of work happening there and the opportunity to potentially help rebuild a city is something very unique. And for those who might be a little bit younger, perhaps it's just going out for a couple of years, and getting into some work and then maybe moving on to another country, Australia or Canada, and then ultimately going home. Who knows? But when you've got that opportunity while you're young, it's always a good one to take. So for those of you who don't know too much about the Christchurch development, so in 2011 there was a rather large earthquake which did cause a lot of damage to the central city area especially. So it's a 40 billion New Zealand dollar project, and they're talking 10 to 15 years. I honestly think it's going to take longer. We're 5 years on now, and we're only about 35–40% of the way through the rebuild. There needs to be, they estimate, around 10,000 skilled tradespeople to come into the city, okay, just to help out. We just simply don't have the population and the labour to actually do this work. The central city is being largely redeveloped and rebuilt. Okay, they've announced a number of key anchor projects or precincts. As of a couple of months ago, there are 18 key projects that need to start. Now, as of a couple of months ago, they'd only begun 3 of those. So there's still a long, long way to go. Now, these anchor projects are things like hospitals, sports, community sports centres, healthcare precincts, so all of your emergency services. There's, law precincts, libraries. So there's, basically the whole city needs to be rebuilt, and we simply can't do it alone. There's a lot of action on the residential front as well. So that, along with all of the housing shortage up in Auckland, is creating a lot of work for, the building and trades in general. And then also a lot of horizontal infrastructure as well. So from, piping, water, sewerage, through to new roads, new link roads, motorways, all those sorts of things. That's all part of the development as well. So I think this slide here, in terms of the documentation that you might need to get in order to put yourself in the best light. Okay, and this applies across the board, not just those who are out there who may not be able to make use of New Zealand skills and demand services due to your occupation. A CV is an obvious starting point. Okay, so a CV needs to be in a New Zealand format. So New Zealand CV is very different to the South African formatted CVs I see a lot. Okay, so if you don't know what a New Zealand CV looks like, that was priority number 1 for you, is actually changing that CV. Now, Skills and Demand is happy to make available to you for free a New Zealand style CV template. It's just a Microsoft Word document that we use. So feel free to request that after tonight. In fact, I'll just make sure that I send it through to everyone that's attended this webinar. That's certainly not a problem. Another piece of information is our Skills and Demand CBD, which is our candidate briefing and declaration form. So this gives us a snapshot of your personal or family situation. That's really important to us, your time frames, your ideal role, perhaps preferred location in New Zealand. So that, along with the CV, is a really good starting point for my team and myself to try and assist you. In terms of other documents, you're going to have to get written references together, electronic copies of any qualifications, licenses, certificates that you might have, anything relevant to your line of work. Make sure you get them all electronically scanned into PDFs, and so that they're sitting on your computer ready to go when the time comes. it's a good idea to get set up on Skype. Okay, Skype is a free video calling tool, and a lot of our candidates, both in the United Kingdom and also South Africa, are undertaking Skype interviews with New Zealand employers. So there's no need for you to visit New Zealand to undertake those interviews. 99% of the time, we just facilitate those through Skype. Lastly, but most importantly, you must understand and commence the visa process. Now, as a lot of you probably realize, you need a job offer 99% of the time in order to get that visa over the line. But what you can't do is just completely forget about the visa until you get a job. And the reason for that is that New Zealand employers generally are happy to employ you, but they don't want to wait for you, okay? Because they don't want to wait 6 months for you to get yourself organized, sell your house, apply for your visa. So the candidates that we're assisting are being told, and the framework that we work by is that you need to be out in New Zealand 2 to 3 months later. So when that job offer comes through, you basically go and get your medicals, apply for your police certificates if you haven't already, get the visa lodged, wait for that to come through, and then you're booking flights and you're on the plane. So Bore will be jumping back on shortly to explain that visa process, but it's really important that you have commenced that process before undertaking interviews. And a New Zealand employer will respect you and think much more of you if you actually have an understanding of that process as well. So New Zealand skills and demand in terms of the occupations that our company is looking for, and please understand that we are just one small company, okay, with a specific set of recruiters that we are assisting from up here in the UK. Okay, now you'll notice here there is a massive trades and construction focus. Okay, carpenters and joiners, HGV drivers, HGV mechanics we're desperate for as well. So diesel, HGV, plant mechanics, they are certainly in demand. Scaffolders as well. Electricians are an interesting one. As it stands at the minute, unless you're fully New Zealand registered, it is very, very difficult for us to get our electricians through the process. Now, for our UK-based candidates, there is actually a course that they complete here in London, which takes around about 1 week to do. At the other end of that course, they come out as a fully registered electrician. So as it stands today, unless you have the ability to fly to London for a week and complete that course, we are going to struggle to get you through the process at the moment. But we're certainly working on that, and we do want to find other alternatives where we can get electricians into New Zealand and working on a supervised or a limited certificate. Away from trades and construction, we also do have some success in the IT space. Certainly more of those who have web development, coding, C+ type experience. And on the accounting side, those who are chartered or management accountants certainly are in demand as well. But as I mentioned on the chat before, you can get your CV across to me and ask specific employment questions after tonight as well. So in terms of the overall process, some recommendations, I guess, from Skills and Demand. Number one, learn about New Zealand. Decide it's actually a country that you're committed to moving to. It's what you want to do. Sitting in on this webinar is a great step, but it really is only the beginning in terms of your research. So that's really important. Number two is I think you have to be realistic. Okay, so you need to overcome any potential issues, be it selling a house, certainly selling vehicles and winding down businesses. All those things can take time, and you've got to have your finances in order before you're going for these interviews, because as I mentioned, the employers don't want to wait too long for you. So really, really important to do that. You need to think about elderly parents. Okay, are they going to have a support network around if you're in New Zealand? It's going to take you a long time to jump on a plane and come back and check on them. So that's very important. And also young children, especially if they're perhaps at high school, they might be quite settled with their friends and studies. So you do have to consider things like that as well. You need to work out when you want to arrive in New Zealand. Okay, when you want to and when you can realistically be there as well. Okay, be very, as I said, realistic about this. Don't try and rush things. We normally work backwards from the date you can arrive in New Zealand and try and start that recruitment process about 3 to 4 months prior to the date you want to and are able to be in the country. Start getting documents together. So that checklist I went through before, things like CVs, references, qualifications, get all of those documents in order. Engage with an immigration advisor as well. Okay, 99% of you will require a permanent job offer in order to apply for a work visa or residency. Okay, obviously Bore is an immigration advisor. You know, there are others out there as well, but do your research into that process. I had a carpenter last month from South Africa who I helped get a job offer before Christmas. A couple of weeks ago, his visa was finally declined because he'd stuffed the application up. He's now not going to New Zealand, so you know, it's dream over for him. It may sound harsh, but you know, that's the reality of it. So think very carefully, you know, before you commence that visa process. Also, you know, it's really important to engage with our other partners, which we'll be introducing you to you after tonight. We do at this stage want to pay special thanks to Migration Cover and also the Bank of New Zealand, who have kindly sponsored tonight. You know, without the help of both those companies, you know, we wouldn't be able to put on, you know, this webinar and pass on this information. So, you know, Migration Cover are fantastic. They can certainly help you guys with, you know, a bit of a backstop. You know, it's a big move. They can help you with your insurance policy when you're considering moving, you know, overseas, halfway around the world. So we can certainly get you in touch with Chris and the team there. And also the Bank of New Zealand help all of our candidates opening up bank accounts before they move out to New Zealand, which is one less thing that you need to worry about when you settle out in the country. And then hopefully once you've gone through all of that, you can book your tickets and get on the plane. It all sounds simple when you read it off one computer screen. Obviously, we appreciate there's going to be a few more stresses and you know, hurdles to overcome along the way. But you know, we've helped a lot of people do this over the last few years, so hopefully we can try and assist you as well. So I'm going to pass you back to Bore now. He's going to jump back in and sort of put his immigration hat on here and talk to you about the basics of that visa.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, so I may have spoken to some of you previously, and it's really important to understand how New Zealand immigration works and how you fit within the whole process. You know, who are we? Well, we're based in the UK and then obviously in New Zealand when I get home, which I can't wait for. And we have 3 licensed advisors. We've assisted over 1,000 families and individuals to work and live in New Zealand. We specialise in New Zealand immigration only, and we have a very important strategic relationship with Mark and his team from New Zealand Skills in Demand. New Zealand is very much job-led, which means that you need a job offer to get through the process. And I guess over the years, one of the key things that I've enjoyed, you know, in the role that I have, I guess, is really talking about my home, New Zealand, and you know, the opportunities and the positives of New Zealand. But it's also assisting positive people like all of you who want to make a change in your life. And nothing substitutes getting an email or call from Immigration New Zealand to say that your client's visa has been approved. Okay, and that's what really gets us going. And that's, you know, obviously why we wake up in the morning, is to help people like you, you know, realise your dreams. Okay, and you know, that's something that me and my colleagues all love, and it's such a great part of the process. Listen, there's ups and downs in this process, and to finally get to that approval is fantastic. So we've built a really good reputation here in the UK and in South Africa now, and also in New Zealand. So if you go on our website, have a look at our reviews, our partner reviews, and some of our you know, articles, you'll find quite quickly that we're a very reputable company, and you know, share in that kind of result with our clients, which is very important to us. So I think the first starting point is getting your evaluation. Okay, so what we would do is, if you haven't already done so, complete our evaluation form and we'll get in contact with you. And what we'll then do is email you, discuss your plan, set out there, understand your situation. Okay, and then we'll then email your evaluation. Okay, the email will confirm the visa that you'd apply for and the costs and the time frames. Now, for the guys that Mark can help, we will then also provide him a report in terms of your visa eligibility. So it's very important for him to understand that you can get a visa and the timeframes that are involved. Okay, so this is the base document in terms of what you need to understand. Now, I can assure you that a lot of people have that in their inbox and don't even read it. Okay, but if you're very committed to this move, you'll read every page of that document. Okay, because this is the biggest move that you're going to be looking at making. Okay, I'm going to go quickly over the visa categories. The first one is the best visa. Now, I'm going to be honest, a lot of South Africans at the minute, a lot of our South African clients are going on a work visa and then applying for residency in New Zealand. And the simple reason for that is the cost of residency is a lot more expensive, and given the rand, they're finding it a lot more cost effective by going on a work visa first and then applying for residency in New Zealand once they start earning New Zealand dollars. So the skilled migrant category is a points-based system. You get points for qualifications, work experience, age, etc. In most cases, it's dependent on a skilled offer of employment. Okay, you've got to be between the ages of 20 and 55, meet the character and medical requirements, and lodge what's called an expression of interest. You need 100 points to lodge this, but we'd only lodge it if you had a job offer. Because if you don't have a job offer, you're not going to get selected. Okay, so once you've lodged your expression of interest and you have a job offer, you can then be in a position to get an invitation to apply from Immigration New Zealand. And then once you've got that invitation, you can then submit your application. Once submitted, it's going to take about 1 to 4 months to process. Now, there were some changes in November last year. Sorry, this is a bit of an old slide. But the positive thing about the changes meant that you get more points for offers of employment outside of Auckland. Okay, so some really positive changes coming in New Zealand. The policy, and on the basis that we just need skilled people coming in. You know, that's the bottom line. Okay, so, you know, certainly for most South African clients, you'll be looking at residency once you get to New Zealand. There is another pathway to residency, and this really suits single and people with no children, and that's the work to residency visa from an accredited employer. You must have an offer of employment for at least 2 years. The employer must be accredited, must be earning 55k or more, meet the health and character requirements. And once you've worked for 24 months with that accredited employer, you can then apply for residency. Okay, so, you know, the difference between this one here and this one here you get straight away. Okay, this one here you've got to work for 2 years. Okay, and then get it. Once you've got this one, you're done. No more immigration paperwork. Whereas with this one, you've then got to wait for another 12, 24 months and then go through the paperwork again. Okay, so again, we will discuss what would be best for you and make you understand the key differences. Okay, now in most cases, once you've got a job offer, you'll be required to lodge what is a temporary visa. Okay, you need an offer of employment from a New Zealand employer, have qualifications and work experience related to the role. There must be no New Zealand citizens available for the role. Again, meet the health and character requirements. Okay, now the validity depends on the occupation location. So it could be valid for 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. It really does depend on where you get the job offer and the actual skill set. And we can, again, go through that with you. And now, if you get a job offer with employer A and you then go to New Zealand and then you get a job offer with employer B, you can then vary the conditions of that visa. So the point that I'm trying to make is that if you do get a job offer with employer A, you don't have to stay with employer A forever. You can change. Okay, so you're not locked in. But if you get residency under the skilled migrant category, it means that you can move around a lot easier. So under a work visa at least, you can move, but there's a little bit of paperwork. But if you've got that residency in place, you wouldn't need any paperwork. Okay, so that's why it's really important for you to go in New Zealand on a work visa and then convert to residency straight away. Now, a work visa in the South African Pretoria branch is looking at about 20 working days to process. Okay, and there have been some recent work visa changes in the Canterbury area where all occupations are getting a 3-year visa. Okay, which is fantastic. So again, some positive changes by Immigration New Zealand to encourage people to come in and help the city rebuild. And we just, again, just short of people. It's a problem that we have, and it's reflected by the changes that are being made to policy. Now, in terms of working holiday visas, this slide's not going to apply to South Africans. because we don't have that dual relationship with you. So, so for my South Africans, you're going to be limited to the residency in the temporary work visa process. So, Mark's gone through how to get a job offer, but it's really important to have an immigration strategy in place, understand how all the visas work together, the implementation of that immigration strategy, for us to advise you on the documents to obtain, for you to understand timeframes and cost for budgeting, because we're moving home, we're Kiwis, and I'm finding this very challenging and difficult. And knowing your timeframes is going to be important so that you can plan your lives around moving there. Okay, and also the costs. I know this is a sensitive issue for our South African clients, given your rand and the value against other dollars. Of the currency. So it's important you understand the cost. Can we afford to do this? What do we need to sell? Do we need to sell the house? Do we need to keep the house? And the other thing is how the visas work together. So you go on a work visa and apply for residency, or do you go on a work to residency visa and then apply for residency? So, it's setting a blueprint for you and you only. So you may go to work and, Bob's got another immigration advisor and he's saying to Bob, this is the best visa. You can't come home and think that that visa is going to apply for you. Everyone's got different needs. Everyone's got different circumstances. So your immigration strategy is not going to be the same as the person sitting next to you that's going to New Zealand. Okay, so you need to understand that, and we can go through that and obviously raise any issues or concerns that we have. Okay, you'll need to get a medical and a police certificate. So for all South African clients, if you're looking to go in the next 6 months, go and get your South African police certificates. For anyone age over the age of 17 will need police certificates. In terms of medicals, there are a few medical physicians in the main South African cities, and again we'll provide that to you. So you have to have an acceptable standard of health. I would suggest that you visit your GP to get a general checkup. Your medicals are valid for 3 months, so you only obtain those when you get a job offer, whereas with the police certificates, go ahead and apply for those. Okay, the police certificates are valid for 6 months. Now, if you have got a previous criminal conviction, please do let us know, and because disclosure is very, very important. Okay, so again, medicals, once you've got a job offer, police certificates if you're looking to go there within 6 months. Now, if you're a teacher, if you have an occupation that requires registration, you need to get that registration before you can work in New Zealand. Mark alluded to the fact that there is a course here in the UK that you can do to become fully registered. If you've got that full registration, you're going to be snapped up very, very quickly. Okay, it's the only place in the world that does. The UK is the only place in the world that does that full registration. So if you are an electrician, I would encourage you to consider that. If you're any of the other occupations, and this is not an exhaustive list on all occupations that need registration, but again, we will go through that with you. You need to start that process. It can be complex and time consuming, and New Zealand employers are not going to consider you until you've got that registration in place. Start the process, and and that's just part of starting the whole visa process, and we can assist you with that. So why use us? Okay, the way that we've built the business and our reputation is to put the client in front of our needs. Okay, to advise you what the best visa is, the most cost-effective visa is, etc. And for that, we've got a great reputation. And what we are is licensed by Immigration New Zealand and the New Zealand government. Okay, so you need a license to provide advice. Because we only take clients on that we know that can get through the process, our success rate is a lot higher. Okay, and there'll be less delays. In terms of assisting you with all the documentation, again, we'll tell you exactly what we need, what we don't need to make that process a lot smoother. Now, we will liaise with Immigration New Zealand and your employer on your behalf. Okay, sometimes it's important to step back and let someone else liaise with those organisations, such as Immigration New Zealand or your employer. Because sometimes some hard words need to be said to Immigration New Zealand or your employer, so your employer may not be given documents that you require to lodge your application. So we sit there as the middleman to make sure that it's all coordinated. We'll create an immigration strategy with you, and because it's mostly paperwork, we know what we need, so we can give you some templates on work references, etc., that we know are going to be accepted by Immigration New Zealand. We'll save you time, money, and we will limit the stress. Okay, it is a stressful process. Okay, there'd be ups and downs, But at the end of the day, we're here to achieve the outcome that you want and that goal that you want of living and working in New Zealand. And we'll push you along the way to make sure we minimise delays. Now, because I'm going home in the next 6 weeks, I've actually gone full circle, and I feel that I'm probably quite qualified to actually advise people about this move home. Now, we're Kiwis and we don't have, the issues with visas because we've got New Zealand passports. But I can tell you what, there's a lot involved with moving from one country to the other country. Okay, I'm spending a lot of time on other aspects of the move. And it's dawned upon me that, if you're looking to make this move, I would thoroughly recommend considering our services so that you can free up time to organise other aspects of your move. Okay, because when this happens, it's like an avalanche. There's a lot of tough decisions that be made, and there's also a lot of time that you need to spend to make sure the move goes through smoothly. And by utilising our services, you have peace and peace of mind that you get the right visa, and that everything will be dealt with as quickly as possible. So, and that's just from my experience lately, which has been great in terms of making this move over. And before that, I just didn't understand what you needed to organise to make that move. And now that I do, I'm very aware there's so much, with this move. It could be family, it could be organising houses, renting houses, could be everything, So just make sure that this piece of the jigsaw puzzle is done properly and concentrate on other aspects of your move. So, listen, I organise Skype calls, so more than willing to if I haven't already done so, spoken to you, I can organise those Skype calls to go through your visa eligibility. Just email me. It's the biggest decision you'll make. So, sit down and speak to us. Understand your visa eligibility, the costs and timeframes. Have all your queries addressed, okay? And there is something for considering, the visa process, starting it. It does one of three things. Number one, it means that you get all the documentation ready so that when you've got a job offer, you're ready to go. Okay. Number two, it means psychologically, if you started the visa process, that you've actually decided, right, we're going to do this. So you start organising your affairs at home. You clean the loft or the attic. You get rid of stuff. You stop buying stuff for the house. I had to tell my wife 12 months before we went, stop buying stuff for the house because we're not going to need that. So, and then the other thing is giving confidence to people like Mark and recruiters that you've started the visa process, so you can actually market yourself in terms of you are a serious candidate to make this move. And sometimes that's the most important thing with New Zealand employers. Okay, so we can give you the advice in terms of how to start, the costs, etc. It's ultimately it's your decision to make. We can't force you into that corner. So it's all about being prepared and getting ready, and that's what we're here to do to make sure it goes through smoothly for you. Both Migration Associates and Skills in Demand have got great social media pages, so a lot of information about life in New Zealand, upcoming events, etc. So I do recommend that you like our pages, go and have a look at the information there. Again, there's no substitute in preparing and researching for this. If you've picked up one thing tonight, fantastic, and that's going to add to your database in terms of this whole move. So what's next? So what we'll do is we'll have a Q&A session for 15 minutes where you can, obviously ask the questions. And I think what we'll do is we'll answer those aloud. And then, what we'll do is obviously email you and get in contact with you guys, and feel free to also email us. And we'll also send you links to our key partners who can assist you with other aspects of the move. Mark alluded to the fact that Migration Cover and Bank of New Zealand are our sponsors. We also work with Moneycorp and PSS, who'll be able to help you with the money transfer, and also some directions to people who can help you with the move in South Africa in terms of your personal effects. So what we'll do is I think we'll kick off the Q&A session, and we'll just answer those out loud, and this is an opportunity for you to ask any questions about any aspects of this move.
Yeah, so Bore, one that Norman's just mentioned is that there's a 2-month delay on police clearances in South Africa. Have you had any experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I get the feeling that in South Africa it's not what you know, it's who you know. and there are agencies that can prioritise those. Now, those agencies are going to want something in your pocket, I believe. So there's some clients that are getting police tips quite quickly, and some that are taking ages. So maybe just ring around, ask some friends or whatever that have done this process before, and see where they got their leads. But I know that there are agents out there.
Great. And Chris Becker was asking, he has indefinite permanent residency on his South African passport, so he's just asking, can his wife get a working visa without having a job offer?
Yep, she can apply. If you've got an indefinite permanent residency visa, Christopher, please contact me, because your partner can then apply for a spousal visa. She won't need a job offer for that, and that can get processed within the space of 3 to 6 months. So that would be one of those visas that you don't need a job offer to get through. And if you've got that PRV in place, there's no reason why, once she's got that visa in her passport, you're going to have to get out to New Zealand within 12 months. Okay, but that's something I can speak to you about.
And Tom's asking, I want to travel to New Zealand on a working holiday visa because he's a UK citizen. Will it be easy to afterwards transfer to the next visa level?
Listen, Tom, if you're in Christchurch, we can set up a coffee and I can help you with the paperwork when you're in New Zealand. The whole working holiday visa process is designed for people to convert from a working holiday visa to a work visa. Try before you buy. It's easy because we could help you with that process. So, a lot of our clients are doing that and loving life in New Zealand.
So Liz is asking about the financial requirements that are compulsory in regards to moving to New Zealand.
So with a work visa application or residency visa application, there is no requirement to show any bank accounts. So there is effectively no financial requirements. In granted, most cases everyone's going to have a job offer, so Immigration New Zealand will be happy that you can maintain yourselves because of that job offer.
And then in terms of vaccination records, Ingrid was asking.
Yeah, so Ingrid, my wife, she's got Crohn's disease, and a very mild form of it. So what she just did was got all of their medical records, and we've got them in. I would encourage everyone to get any personal data about themselves, irrespective if it's medical records, it could be work references, it could be qualifications. Get all those documents so that you've got those hard paper copies. Because if you're in New Zealand trying to get those from South Africa, if you bring a cell phone or whatever, your number pops up, people can easily ignore you. Okay, so any personal records, get those and bring those with you in paper form.
Yeah. And then in terms of procedures with pets,
we do work with a pet provider, but it is a cumbersome process and it's quite an expensive process. So you need to, I know pets are family members, I get that. It's just understanding the cost and the time frames available in terms of how to do it.
Chris is asking about a loan to buy a vehicle.
Listen, in any country, you're going to be able to, get finance to buy a vehicle, and finances are only going to be given to you if you've got a credit history, and you can actually support that.
Cars are very cheap to buy in New Zealand, so even around the $1,000 or $2,000 New Zealand dollar mark, you can pick up a reasonably, good little runabout initially. We've got a lot of Japanese imported cars in New Zealand, so our car stock is actually quite old. But you can certainly pick up a car cheap, so that might be a better way to do it initially. Sonia, it's very easy to open a bank account in New Zealand. You'll all be receiving information from the Bank of New Zealand, or for you to click through to the Bank of New Zealand after tonight, and they can actually get that bank account pre-opened for you so that you can be transferring money into it before you arrive. We've got a question here from Brendan on the skills list. Bore, there's a category A, B, and C. What is the difference between them?
I actually don't know the answer to that question because I've never. There is skills. There is occupation skill level 1, 2, and 3, but I'm not aware that there's an A, B, or C. So it's just really, if there is a classification, it'll be just about the skill set and the different classifications. So with skill level 1 occupation, you need to show a degree or 5 years worth of experience, whereas with a level 3 job, you need to show a qualification or 3 years of work experience. So.
And Liz is asking, can you get a skilled migrant visa without a job offer?
Yes, you can, if you can score 140 points, Liz, but we don't see a lot of those people, okay? And the reason being is that you have to have qualifications or work experience in an area of absolute skill shortage. Your partner is going to have to be degree qualified, and in most cases you're going to be needing to be between the ages of 30 to 40 to get through the process. So because of all those permutations, we find it very difficult for people to get through without a job offer.
Were there any more questions? If so, type them in quickly. But I think we've got through most of those questions that you guys have been typing through. Tom's also asking about a medical record for the working holiday.
With the working holiday visa, Tom, apply for a 12-month visa. You won't need a medical, okay? But if you've got some sort of condition, it's always important to have a medical record just on file for yourself. Nothing needs to be tendered to Immigration New Zealand.
And also, Chris, in terms of the Bank of New Zealand with the transferring of the money, we actually work with Moneycorp, so they're one of our sponsors that was up on the screen there. So they are a foreign exchange company, so they will actually transfer that money into your Bank of New Zealand account. And the Bank of New Zealand happily, allow this because they know Moneycorp will get you a much better rate than a bank can. Norman, the cost of the entire process, how long is a piece of string, would be my answer, without knowing your exact, sort of family situation and all those sorts of things. Very hard to comment on that one, but I have put together a table of estimated costs, when it comes to visas and flights and other elements of the move. So I'm happy to send that across to you, Norman, if you would like.
Yeah, I guess the only, the picture that you've got in front of your screens now, that just for me just exemplifies New Zealand. Beauty, space. It looks pretty peaceful. It looks pretty warm. And I guess it's just whether or not you guys decide to go through this process. Mark can assist you where he can, in terms of the applications. We can assist on the visa side of things. But most importantly, what we want you to do is go away, do your research, and then make a decision whether or not this is what you want to do. The clients that we're helping that are getting out there from South Africa and from the UK who are out there are loving life, and some of them have wished that they should have done this a lot earlier. And that just goes down to the fact that they're providing opportunities for their children and themselves and just having a better lifestyle. So the opportunities are there, okay? It's not for us to make the decision for you. That's for you to make the decision. Some of you are going to have to make that extra effort in going to New Zealand and visiting New Zealand to get that job offer, okay? For some of you, you can get a job offer on Skype. For some of you, you're going to have to physically go there. So what you really put into this, you'll reap the rewards of that. Whereas some people just wait for that job offer to kind of land in the lap, and if that's due, it's not going to happen.
Chris, I see your question here about your wife with the passport and a different name. I can't imagine it's going to stop her from getting a New Zealand license. So it would probably be a case of just getting, relevant documentation, in order when you go into the Automobile Association in New Zealand.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we'll be in touch with you guys. We'll send you an email, and if you have any questions, either contact myself or Mark. But at this point in time, thank you for your time today, and we look forward to assisting you.
Yeah, look, thank you very much for taking the time, and hopefully you found this evening of use, and that you've left with some good information.